all three of you guys are, to me, like a perfect representation of your own breeds. You guys are all doing your own things, and you're staying true to yourself and staying true to what you believe is right for the breed, and right for your program and who you are as people at the same time. Kind of in a sense, a moral stance on top of everything else. And correct me if I'm wrong, but and so, as we see in dogs today, that there's just a lot of people following trends, a lot of people who aren't really um, in it for the dogs and in it to better the breed. They're more in it to gain social media clout, or what they think might give them a little extra cash and glory at the same time in some weird way. But I don't know exactly. I quit trying to pontificate on all of that stuff. The more I do, the more it hurts my head. So, and the more I'm wrong, probably there's probably other weird things going on. Um, but anyway, so I just wanted to talk about that, you guys, and I trust what you guys are doing in your own yards, and so. Um, Brian, kind of just start off like, how do you stay? You've been doing it for so long. How do you stay true uh, um, to your program and buck the trends and s- still deal with the public and try to educate them and 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 maintain what you have to this day? I mean, it seems like it's just getting harder and harder to do so.
It is. And I thought about this a lot. Well, not a lot, but I've been trying to think about it today. Like you said, like the popular fads and stuff. And I mean, I'm different than I think we're all a little bit different than a lot, to where I always just kind of stuck my head in the sand and did my own thing. Focused more on my stuff. But now that I've done it for so long, I do try to pay attention on some of the fads and stuff. And the reason more so is so I can kind of get a game plan. And I'm looking a lot more the longer I've got into this, and obviously I'm sticking to my program, but I'm trying to think of more preservation for the bloodlines in general. And by that I mean I'm thinking back over the years, the things that you know, uh, like when I got into it, it was, and this is I think general in all breeds, right? Like English imports, and I think it's an American thing, and just or every country. I got people in other countries constantly wanting something from America and vice versa, right? So it's always greener, grass is greener on the other side, and I see this a lot. And when got into it, it was more. If you had an English import, you were the thing. You were winning all the shows, and the judges were kind of influenced by this as well. So they were putting those dogs up, and confirmation champions and stuff. And then maybe a decade goes by, maybe a little less, 5 years or so, and then it's red dogs and it's South African dogs, and it's judges are putting them up. And if you have a red dog, it's the ticket. And you can say the same thing with tight, blockier heads, shorter muzzles, and they're following that. Or like my thing, even the bone, right? The more bone you have, and it's kind of their selling point. Or even, I've been thinking about it. I've done health testing, and it's this. When I started, it was a certain, genetic testing, like, oh, well, your dog doesn't have this, then, or hips. They really pushed hips a lot, which they kind of do now still too. But if you didn't have that, then you were an outcast, and kind of same thing. But they use those as selling points, not for breeding, and that was the problem. Everything I kind of take in, it's more for breeding, and form follows function. So I try to stick with that aspect of it, not just a popular bloodline. And I seen it. For example, the Intrepid blood that I started with, even early on, I was kind of hesitant to get too involved with it, because everybody had it. It was very popular. And just like that, the flavor of the week. And it was because it was the only one they could get their hands on. Then people started saying, oh, there's an import. the new fresh import came off, the airplane and came to the United States. Everybody's breeding to it. Then everybody's getting puppies from it. They're importing their own. And just like that, an entire bloodline that I would argue to say at least 15 breeders are using this same bloodline, it vanishes. They drop it like a bad habit, and not for the better. Again, that's just what the trend is, and then maybe that one was still good blood wise, bloodline still functional. And I'm talking about for my breed, still capable, intelligent, a good health. Something else comes off and now it has a shorter muzzle, whatever, and they jump on the bandwagon, or it's I hate to say this because it's always a sore subject, but like blue or, whatever, a different color, certain trait, and then everybody jumps on it and sees dollar signs where I don't see that. I look at it more as, it has to check so many boxes for me. And I think I've always looked at it like that. But now, it's kind of affected my thoughts, 26 years or whatever in this same breed, to where I look at those patterns and I say, well, this blood, like for example, the South African blood wasn't bad, right? It actually helped a lot of the bloodlines at the time. But again, it just disappeared where, I have some lines where I'm trying to preserve, and not for the selling point where somebody else will try to peddle it. They have Irish lines. Back in the day, it was Dublin Red, or it was Psycho, or it was all this stuff. And then the new thing came in for them. It was pit bulls, and they dropped all their blood like that and started focusing, and it disappeared. And, the same thing can be said for the U.S. I think it's universal for all the people that are breeding dogs out there. And I think it's a mistake. But, like, for example, I like a well-balanced dog, but because of the whole aspect of the extreme bulliness that the bloodline in general has gone to, I've kind of taken under my wing to say, all right, what's going to help the future one day, And for me, I might even keep a more terrier type just to help those dogs maybe down the road, if it ever. And again, I don't care about other people. I'm doing my own thing, but it comes to a point where, like we talked, people are uneducated. They don't know what and this is the biggest thing. Look at the history of the dogs in the foundation, what they look like, how they functioned, what they did. And it's just like a big thing where, I recently seen a discussion on these dogs don't have enough bone. Well, enough bone for what? To prance around a show ring? Like their statement doesn't have any argument or anything to back it up, prove, and it was, the dogs now in the show ring can get their limbs snapped like twigs, and it's just comical. Like, what limbs have they snapped off? For one, it's just an ignorant statement, and two, that's what the problem is. They need to be light on their feet. They need to. I mean, look at it. These big cats. I mean, this is probably a little off, but this is the way I see it. They're light on their feet. They can jump in a tree, leopards and all this stuff, but there's still substance. There's still a lot that they can do with it. And these people are just taking little bits and pieces out of character and using it to benefit themselves, it seems, or a selling point, maybe because I don't know. It's just the weirdest thing for me. For them to discuss, whatever. But yeah, that's kind of, so I've just been, like I said, kind of been doing my own thing. But recently I've been trying to think more proactive, seeing, there's a couple of the older lines that I feel are superior to a lot of the stuff out there. So I'm kind of making plays now, keeping more dogs than I should, to try to keep some of these lines going, because at the end of the day, I'm looking at myself. If I just have my little pocket of just one, breeding, how can I do my own outcrosses, really, unless I'm going to outcross to what I consider poor quality is that I'm seeing now. I don't see a lot of good ones. It's sad when people say, well, who do you recommend? And there's not many that I would recommend except myself. So I'm thinking, all right, I need to try to, be proactive. And if I'm seeing the muzzles are getting too short, then maybe I need to keep a few, maybe even they're a little longer than what I like. But if you put that to a dog with a shorter muzzle, it's going to help. Leg, same thing. And then vice versa. I see these trends. Unfortunately, I mean, it's good and it's bad. I see it as bad because, like, right now it's gotten popular to get these athletic type Staffordshire Bull Terriers, which the truth is they're the ones that the original Staffordshire Bull Terriers should be. And so people are trying to make material gain on that, you know, so they want my dogs so they can sell them and make money. And it's a cool thing now. So I'm looking at it that way too. But they're not focusing on temperament. These dogs are shy, skittish, bad health, bad hips, you know, but they done it in a bark and they're good on that, you know, and just it's ridiculous stuff, but they have skin issues. They have, and I don't even want to talk about some of the others, you know, because it's just bad for the breed. But some people have gone as far as mixing, you know, other breeds in pit bulls, and you know, you can say the same the show line. I've heard of people swearing that they've mixed, you know, like pug and other types to get the even more extreme types as well. So, and then the same with weight. You know, you could argue that. I've seen so many fads where big staff is what everybody wants because it's old school, which I don't think you need to focus too much on the weight. The bottom of the day is they need to kind of float when they walk and they need to be functional. And when it's too big for that job or too small, and again, a lot of, oh, I'm going to make the smallest ones, these little miniature ones, and they have health problems, whelping problems. And it's just, it's crazy, but, I might have went a little bit over, but that's kind of my thoughts, the way it's been, and why, you know, I just try to stick to my path, but I think we can use some of these trends for breeders like us, at least, you know, try to look in the other, you know, yard and say, okay, these idiots out here are all chasing their tails, but let's try, you know, it's going to be gone, or they're just, overlooking something, or maybe they're going so extreme to where, you know, I kind of taken it on myself to try to have a few dogs in my yard that can fix those problems, you know. And I'm going to this 2026. I'm starting like a Staffordshire Bull Terrier Heritage Club, and I'm still working on it and stuff. But I'm hoping that too can kind of help get some of the people in my breed, because I have friends that are, you know, or people I've become friends with that are like-minded, and try to get the direction and help educate people on, first, what Staffordshire Bull Terrier is supposed to be, and then two, some of the ways that, you know, we can as a community kind of work together, because I'm tired of being complaining about it all the time, but then, you know, I don't do nothing about it. So maybe I can help some on that side.
So I mean, obviously the dogs that I have, I'll take it here. It's like almost everybody can say in every breed, it always seems like the old lines from back in the day are always substantially better to the dogs of current. Everybody always says every breed's getting watered down. And I would agree. You look back at all the Dog USA, Dog World, whatever, breed club books from late 80s, 90s, those dogs looked superior to the current, what I want to say, mutts almost in every breed today. And the same with the Corso, I feel. So the lines that I'm working with, everybody kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of pissed them away. They bred them to this, bred them to that, lost the bloodline, and then once they lost the bloodline, then they wanted to say that blood was no good, and what they had now is better. And so obviously I took some offense to that, and then I started looking at these older lines, and I liked the appearance, I liked the temperament, I liked everything about them. So I went chasing those bloodlines, found them, and kind of what Brian said is, I'm just trying to preserve that blood. I'm trying to preserve the blood that everybody lost, said was no good. I'm preserving it, and I'm showing them that it's better than what they got today. So, you know, that's kind of my whole thing. Save that line, preserve it, really purify it, you know, because I'm really inbreeding and line breeding hard on those dogs to an extent that nobody even in the Corso world is even doing. Most people are outcross. You rarely even hear about people inbreeding and line breeding within the Corsos, because there's so many health issues with modern day bloodlines that you can't even do more than one or two line breedings or inbreedings, and then your dog's basically combust, might as well say. So,
and not to cut you off, but and I'm sorry, but I agree 100%. And like he's saying, like even when I started, we're not saying that the bloodlines are superior than back then than they were, but there's still improvements to be made. So you're kind of,
Absolutely.
you're selecting from, maybe back then they had more dogs, but you're refining it to a better type. And that's where a breeder's, comes in that knows what he's doing and picking. And so, yeah, you're refining the blood, the good stuff that was out there and making more of a type for yourself and for a bloodline. And that's the important thing. That's what people don't get. It's not just the old blood. It's taking it, and then you can use your knowledge in the stuff that's out there today. Like you said, maybe there was a health issue or this and that. Well, you can figure out what those were, and we have the technology now, and then inbreed it out. Or inbreeding is always such a bad word, but it's not if you know what you're doing and you inbreed to quality stock. Sorry to cut you off, but
No,
I agree
absolutely,
100%, man.
and
Yeah.
I agree with that. It's like the inbreeding gets thrown around as this horrible thing, but really, I feel like that's God's gift to breeding animals.
Yeah.
Is when you inbreed, even if you're breeding off of, say, lousy stock, just to take this in a different direction for a second, even if you're inbreeding on lousy stock, there is a chance that you might get a dog that pops out of an inbreeding that doesn't possess those traits. And since it was inbred that tight, that you might be able to carry on with that dog and improve the line. Just because the two dogs you bred, say, aren't the best, the inbreeding might expose all the bad, but it could expose some of the good.
Yeah.
I don't know. People take the line breeding and the inbreeding to a certain depths that they just don't understand the minds of a more breeding side versus just your pet consumer side. But back to as far as the Corsos, so like you said, I'm on those old lines, purifying them, working with them, trying to refine them, as Brian said. And my thing is, I'm trying to make a superior dog to where eventually, this is eventually down the road, kind of like Brian said, my head was in the sand for like 10 years. 10 years I went and just did my thing, wasn't even on social media, didn't care to be. I was just breeding dogs that I liked and did what I did with them. So once I finally popped out onto social media, found out that, oh, nobody has this blood anymore. I'm legit the last one that has this blood and is keeping it pure, keeping it an actual family of dogs. So I'm like, all right. And then I'm starting to see the health problems with the other dogs, and I'm starting to see that mine don't really have any health problems. Longevity, no health problems have really shown up that are a detriment. No skin issues, no nothing. And I'm starting to disprove certain things that everybody said, like you can't breed multiple generations of blue dogs. I have some dogs that are going on now 5 generations, blue to blue, no skin irritation, no skin issues, nothing. Not
Yeah, and I
seeing.
agree with that too. That's a problem. And again, sorry to step in, but I see it so much too. And instead of looking at the genes of that dog, like maybe it's the bloodline, maybe it's the stock it's from.
Absolutely.
This is 2025, about to be 2026. Why are we still thinking like caveman to where I get it back in the day? Oh, if I had in my bloodline, if I had because I've seen skin issues in red dogs, black dogs. I've never had blues until shoot, it wasn't but a few years back. And my blue dogs don't have any health skin issues either. But I've had plenty that were red that had problems. I've culled from my program. Black dogs that had problems and I've culled from my program. So again, it's more the individual, like you said. I'm glad you brought that up because I know I did mention blue for being maybe for a breeding fad. But the problem again goes when someone's not trying to better the breed; they're trying to just make profit from the breed, and
Right.
and they're doing it the wrong way. But yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
And that's it's just the overbreeding and the not. There's no real selection, and a lot of it's just ignorance. A lot of it'll just be one or two random people back in the day that bred 2 blue dogs together. It just so happened the whole litter gets skin irritation, and it might not even be because of the blue gene. It might be because of how they took care of them, and they just link that and then start saying for the next 10 years you can't breed blue to blue when they only did it one time, it failed, and then they just think that's the
Look
gospel.
at Weimaraners, right? Aren't they blue dogs? I mean,
Right.
geez, I don't know,
Right.
but yeah,
Right. So basically with the courses that I'm working on, it's like kind of like Brian said, I'm trying to make such a pure family that's healthy, longevity, has ability, works, all this. And then eventually I want to get to the point where I do start selling to the public, because right now I don't sell to the public. I just breed for myself. So I want to get to the point where I start letting some dogs go to the public, and in the hope that the stock here would be so inbred and line bred on healthy dogs, working dogs, longevity, that they can be bred or crossed to just about anything, and it's going to fix it. It's going to fix the other side or fix something. You know, that's the whole, I guess, kind of plan or scheme or whatever you want to say. But people don't realize it takes such a long time. You know, it's to build a real family, and kind of like Brian was saying, to have the different lines. You can't just have one line, one nucleus, and expect to get too far, because you'll eventually you'll kind of just dead end with that. So like with my dogs, I have 3 separate lines of dogs. You know, I've built 3 separate families and 3 different phenotypes, or I should say, yeah, 3 different phenotypes, 1 phenotype per family, where I can kind of mix and match to get what I want. You know, some dogs are bigger, heavier, shorter muzzles. Some are finer boned, more athletic, longer muzzles. You kind of cross them, you get the kind of the in-between line. Because you got to think years out ahead. You can't think of just right now and right now. You know, you're not going to get too far. You got to think 20 steps ahead when you're a breeder. What you're going to need, or what don't you need, but you got to maintain certain things. And people get caught up in breeding one certain kind of trait, and it just starts compounding, and then before they know it, they've lost stuff. They've lost traits because they focused on one thing. They focused on size, or they focused on bone, or they focused on whatever head type, and then they've lost several different things. When if you would have had a couple different lines, maintain certain features or whatnot in each family, it's a lot easier to project forward. So then, as far as what brings me to now, so I've maintained that stuff, and I've come to a point now where I'm like, where do I go for an outcross? Yes, I have my 3 families, but my 3 families are all somehow related, even though they have their little bit of diversity, but they're still related. And obviously, they're only getting closer related the more I intertwine each family. So I'm like, where am I going to go? Because I feel like the dogs that are out there for Corsos, which everybody knows, like Brian said, the fad is import dogs from Italy, from Hungary or Europe, wherever. And they just seem so poor quality. I'm like, I wouldn't dare take the work that I've done for the past 10 years and cross it to this. I'm just going to undo everything I just did for 10 years. I'm just going to pretty much wipe it away. Or even if I don't wipe it away, it's going to be more work than it is just to
It's
use
like,
those
what
dogs.
does it benefit your line? It doesn't. It
doesn't.
actually puts you a step back, you're trying to get 2 steps forward, but you're 2 steps back, you know?
Exactly.
No, I've been in the same boat. I get it.
So I've come to, with the Corso, and especially the lines I have, it's a very different animal to say maybe your Staffordshires or Jerry. What breed do you raise? I'm not familiar.
American Bullies.
American Bullies. So my Corsos and American Bullies would probably be closer than, say, the Staffordshires, because my original line of Corsos was made here in the States and portrayed to be an imported dog, but really it was just Neapolitan Mastiff, Rottweiler, and Pit Bull kind of bred together for several years. He made a type of dog, he made his type of Corso, what have you. So mine's a little bit different of an animal. So when I'm looking now that I want to bring in fresh blood, I'm now reverting to, I want to put back in some of the foundational breeds that were used to make my type of Corso. So I want to put back in, not necessarily Neapolitan Mastiff because they have a lot of health problems, but I'm looking at putting, working line Rottweilers in, or American Pit Bull Terriers, more bigger catch weight style game dogs, because it's a cleaner outcross. I know what I'm getting with a line bred inbred American Pit Bull Terrier, and I know what I'm getting from a line bred inbred Rottweiler. They've been bred that way for hundreds of years. They're only going to throw those traits, those looks, those temperaments. With these Corsos coming from God knows where, I don't know what I'm going to get. I might get Bull Mastiff, I might get Boxer, I might get Dog de Bordeaux, I might get English Mastiff. Who knows? It's such a huge gene pool when you're messing with those. So that's kind of what I'm working with my Corsos. And I don't know if I answered all your questions, Sean, or maybe you can point me to what I didn't answer.
Well, I think you're getting close. You did well. I mean, thanks. That was perfect. But expand on a little bit, like where from the outside looking into your program, like you're talking about going back to a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull, or what I think you should is a Neo, because I just love Neos. But no, I get why you wouldn't. But um, that goes against the trends and all of that. But you're thinking about the longevity of your program and the
Well, and the way
longevity.
I see it too, from a breeder
Yeah.
standpoint, is, and I tell everybody that, well, I don't tell everybody this, but I'm thinking it always. This is what people don't understand. Everybody's big on outcrossing. Outcrossing can hide bad genes. You might have a dog with skin problems and you outcross and, oh, I fixed it. No, you didn't. You buried it back down. So when you're cooking a cake and you're putting shit in it, you're going to taste that shit when you eat that cake. That's probably a terrible analogy, and sorry for my language. But so where a pit bull, like, he's narrowing it down to where something that has the least amount of flaws that these guys literally killed if they didn't make the grade, for hundreds of years. I mean, people keep skirting around the idea. That's why history is important, versus somebody that took a pet dog, and just because of its looks and bred it and then put it in, put it in the cake. You don't know what's in there, but I don't know if that, is what you meant, but that's what I would do too, as far as, the genes that are in there, like you said. And then that's where I just, I talk crap about, embark with the percentage on different breeds, but in reality, then you could track, okay, every time I hit pit bull in my, and maybe if it helps you for a breeding program to where you can get it to where, you get the smaller percentage, but you get that healthier stock, I don't know, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Unless you can find a bloodline like you want from Italy, but it sounds like the same thing. A lot of the staffs, man, they're starting to mix, pit bull stuff in it. It's old school. It's a rare line. They're making pedigrees up or whatever else, or saying it's something else, and suddenly it's whatever. And again, it's, I don't know what they use. It could be a dog that bites people. A poor example, to where if you go to something like you just said, that is a proven, not a man biter line, or maybe that's, I don't know, as far as what, for protection type stuff, maybe get one that's maybe like some of my dogs, because they come more from that stuff. I have some that aren't as dog aggressive as others. Some of them kind of go looking for it, and others mind their own business unless something messes with them. So I wouldn't use, you wouldn't want one like that to where they just want to attack each other, but still reserved and confident enough,
Well, that is something that is different from the courses, because as far as my type of dog, I like a real rough dog. I like a rough, hard dog with some grit. So, I mean, you kind of train them to bite in a guard dog scenario. So I wouldn't mind. I don't mind, a man biter, as long as it ain't coming at me. It's coming at the person you pointed to.
And that's a misrepresented. A lot of people that don't know dogs enough will say this dog's a man biter. It could be a mouthy dog. It could be, I got some that kind of want to mouth a little bit more, and someone might think, oh, he tried to bite me. No, or it's, it's different. They're trying to hold the dog back, and the dog wants to get something, and then it's all over. But for protection, I could see you using that to where, so you have to use that loosely too. And who bred the dog and who's saying that, because some idiot could be saying it's a man biter and it's not. It's a protection type thing, versus one that's just not all there, and that's a dangerous liability, But yeah, no, I agree, and you got to consider that too. People don't understand. Like, I hear so many times, people's been breeding for 1 year, and it's not even about that. Someone from 1 year could have good knowledge, but the problem is they heard it from an idiot that says this is what it is, and they consider that the Bible. and
Yes.
they don't know what they're talking about, you know?
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So to take it back to what Sean said, because I'm sure he wants to move on to Jerry here. Let him get some
Yeah.
airtime. Um, so yeah, basically what I'm doing with my ideology of wanting to go back to some of the foundational breeds that were put into these Corsos and use them again, it's completely unorthodox. You know, I'm going to be probably blackballed from the community if I do that. I have not done it yet, but that is the future plan. Um, but I really don't care, because I don't care about what those people think. What, you know, I don't care. I'm thinking of, to maintain the type of dog, you know, phenotype, genotype, temperament. I'm gonna need to do this. It's what I feel, and all the history and the digging I've done on these lines of dogs. It makes the most sense. So that's what I'm going to do regardless. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if the registries say, hey, we're not going to register your dogs anymore because we heard you're running some sideline outcrosses to other breeds. I don't care. I'll keep track of my own dogs, because it's a real passion for myself. I don't do it for anybody else but my own enjoyment. You know, I'm a blue collar guy. I work 50, 60 hours a week. It's my downtime to be able to come home, feed and water the dogs, do some breedings. That's the stuff I like to do. So I'm doing it for myself. I really don't care what the public or what anybody else has to say about what I'm doing with my program.
Yeah, again, you're bucking the trends, and you're staying true to who you are. That's yeah. Uh, it, this brings on another subject that maybe we could do a part two in the near future, because Jerry has done a lot of service in the, if you guys don't already know, is the American Bully community, about coefficiency of inbreeding numbers, because in the American Bully community and in the companion breed world, um, I think uh, line breeding and inbreeding is a little different, in my opinion, and just my rudimentary knowledge. And when you're looking at it in this way, I think, especially like in, say, an American Bully or a French Bulldog, especially these new lines of French Bulldogs, we don't necessarily know exactly what's in them, and we can't go back generations like you guys can with your breeds. And so the inbreeding is a little tough. Line breeding is a little tougher to manage, I think, because a lot of times, in my opinion, and I'm not speaking for Jerry. Jerry could correct me. Just in my opinion, is uh, it seems like when guys try to breed like your average, what they consider a Great American Pit Bull Terrier breeder or something, they end up failing miserably. You know what I mean? When they try to double down on something, all they end up doing is double downing on the bad. In our companion breeds, in my opinion, I have not seen a lot of that go well. Um, I could probably see in some regards English bulldogs, because there's some really well established lines, but those are very hard to get your hands on, and they're not very consumer oriented. Those are tucked away, and they're only handled by certain people, and that's a whole different story. So what Jerry's done in the American Bully community, he's offered people the opportunity to realize, hey, the tighter you go in these breeds, we realize the more problems you end up seem to be having. And because really you're only going back to maybe a handful of dogs, and it's just causing more and more issues. And so Jerry's done a really good service, and kind of educated some of the ignorant folks in his community on a proper way to maneuver your way through, a proper way of maybe skirting that line of what a proper line breeding could be, or matching up a good pairing and all that by using coefficient numbers and percentages and stuff. So I think this would be a great part too that we could talk about, because there's different perspectives here because of different breeds. But
Well, and then
um,
and two, just to mention, like I got a book from like the 50s and it talks about inbreeding, or maybe it's the 40s, and it's telling you inbreed. But the problem that people don't understand is these were when a lot of breeds were just getting established, so they were such crossed out to where
Hmm.
you could do that. Where now
Right.
you're
Yeah.
talking about 100 more generations of something, or even whatever, and then you're inbreeding. And then back then too, let's be real, they drowned them or they popped them in the head when they got something that didn't act right, to where you don't want to be doing that. You don't want a whole litter where there's only one good pup in it. So all this stuff that people, they need to take that in consideration, and I don't think it's for people that should be doing it that doesn't have a family of dogs. So by meaning that, like, say I sell you a dog and immediately you start inbreeding it. Well, you don't know everything about the parent. So maybe that dog is a perfect example, but maybe you didn't know that the parent had a bad underbite, right? So now you're like, where the frick is this bad underbite getting thrown out? This dog's perfect. Again, they don't know, and that's just an example, but it's to where you need a family to where, all right, I'm pretty sure there's nothing. And like, like you were saying, or know the right coefficiency, or know, you got to know the faults and the problems too in it, or seen enough of the good to know that it's a chance to do it. If you're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, but too many times this is King Kong's son, so let's triple inbreed and that's going to improve it. That's the wrong reason to do it. So
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, no, I think that'd be a good one.
Well, the old advice, right, is just to inbreed until that flaw jumps out, right?
Yeah. And most people don't want to
And
do that. It's scary because there will be one, and then you're gonna have to.
sure,
I've done it. I've seen. I don't talk about it because I don't like it. But yeah, you're exactly right, man. Yeah.
I mean, basically, inbreed it until it breaks, right, and then figure it out,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then
See
move
what case
forward
they do.
again, right? But and I don't really want to get off on this tangent, but
Yeah.
you know, um, the thing is like you said, the books from the 40s or the 50s or whenever it is, and technology and science has moved and has improved so much since then that we know so much more about breeding, about genetics, about the impact of inbreeding, not just on the phenotype, but the uh, well, on the genotype side, and what happens, right, with the inbreeding depression and the actual changes in the breed and suppression of immune systems and things like that they didn't necessarily know back then, right? And so, technology, and we just know much more today scientifically than we knew in the 1940s or 50s, and there's really, no reason anymore to inbreed so much. There's just not. You can get a consistent phenotype with these breeds now that are Corsos are much. Let's see. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like Corso started about it in the 80s around here in the U.S. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
1988, like
Yeah.
1986 to 88 was kind of like the inception in the
Okay. Yeah.
U.S.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. 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 And this, and of course, the Staffy was part of the foundation of the American Bullet, which I mean, Staffy is just an AKC version of the American, Pit Bull Terrier, right? Different
Yeah. Exactly.
lines, right? Different lines. They kind of, UKC and stuff. They kind of split them off, right? And said, well, we don't want
Yeah.
to, we don't want these dogs associated with these dogs, so we're going to call them something else.
Yeah.
But
Actually, I just did a video I hadn't posted yet on that exact same thing. Yeah. Exactly.
so
What's your
we
thoughts? And I'm sorry I don't want to get on a tangent but like, what's your thoughts on the coefficiency, say, of just on a pedigree versus do you take any weight? Do you believe, like, let's just say embark, do you believe their coefficiency number they give somebody, or do you think it's a tool or not? Because, and the reason I mention this, because I got a bitch that's real tight bred, but I know how she's bred, and I do embark now because it's been cheap just for the health testing aspect of it. And she's a real low coefficiency for someone that's inbred like she is. And then I did a father or a mother son breeding, and I got a son off her, and the same thing. He's pretty low. And I know you don't want to hear this, but I was thinking about going the son again, like do a triple back to her. I'm not, but I'm not gonna lie, because I'm thinking that number, if I were to do it, that would be the one to do. Whereas I got some that are higher coefficiency and they're half brother, half sister. Where this one, it's like I'm just getting that extreme on one end. Where if I go by embark and believe that percentage is correct, but what's your thoughts on the embark percentage? Do you think it has any weight, or should I still just focus on the pedigree, the fact that
No, no, I definitely think that the embark will carry a lot of weight because they're able to, they're able to take a look at
that's what I
those
figured.
genes, those chromosomes, and what they call inherited by descent. They can actually identify that, right? They know, and that's the thing. See, when we do paper inbreeding coefficients, that's the difference. We don't know what gets inherited by descent,
Yeah,
but when we do genetic testing, we know exactly what got inherited, right?
yeah,
I do both. I do it on paper, and then I do the embark exam, or I do the embark test, right? And
yeah.
I know that there is always going to be a difference. And there's another measurement called ancestor loss coefficient that gets created when I do the analysis and everything in my software. And now that I've been doing this, just in American Bullets for almost 4 years now, I can pretty much gauge what that ancestor loss coefficient is, which is basically a measurement of uh, uh, ancestor loss coefficient is a basic is a measurement of um, genetic variability. Okay, so the lower the number on the ancestor loss coefficient, the less variability I have. So I can look at my inbreeding coefficient that I have and know that if my ancestor loss coefficient is really low, then I'm going to have I just know that that genetic number is going to come back a lot higher than what it might otherwise. So that ancestor loss coefficient is kind of a barometer of where I might actually be when I'm looking at the paper versus the embark test, right? So sometimes I'll get within 5% of the embark. The paper will be within 5% of the embark results, and sometimes there's been a difference of 3 times. The paper might say 10%, and the embark comes back at 30.
Right.
I can but so far I've been able to correlate that ancestor loss coefficient with what I get on paper, and I can kind of say, well,
Yeah.
it might say that it's 10% on paper, but I would bet that it's going to come back between 30 and 40.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's just genetics. And that's what people don't get either.
Yep.
To where, I
Yep.
mean, I just had a litter I bred to a black and tan. Everybody said don't, because people frown on it on my breed. I could care less. She's a great example. And I bred her to a
Mm-hmm.
black and tan carrier. And
Mm-hmm.
theoretically, I should have had 4 puppies. I should have had 3 black and tans. I didn't have any black and tans. And they were all
Right.
males, which again, you know how that. So you just don't know
Yep.
where
You
the
don't.
genetics are so. And you're right. But those tools can help narrow it down. And are we willing to take that chance? And like you were just pointing out, if you were to do a inbreeding, say you're just set on it, then maybe you should use one that has the lower on the, like some of them that I've done in the past that didn't work out. I wish now I would have had some of these tools to where maybe that was just so extremely high on that one, even though I thought he was the same as another one. and that's why it didn't work. Or I don't know, but yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, thanks for telling me that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
find
because you
it
can.
very interesting that people always make it out that genetics is an exact science. I hear so many people that portray that genetics is like cut and dry. It's this percentage. Each pup's getting
Yeah.
50% of its mom, 50% of its dad, and it's total bull crap. It's one dog
Yeah.
could have 90% of its father. The next one could have 10% of its father. Out
Well,
of
like
a
you
pup, out of
just
a
said,
litter.
my line has been going on forever, and I still see diversity in it. You would think
Mhm.
so, and some dogs throw certain traits more so, not every time, or it's not even people are looking at the wrong thing. Excuse me. Maybe the bitches are always a certain type with this male, or vice versa. The males always carry certain traits. If I look hard on that, to where again, some families I can inbreed and like this female, I've been getting really good stuff from it. To where I wouldn't do that on some of my other lines because I haven't got that clean that what I want from it like that. So certain, and it has to go down to just the genetics behind that dog. That individual is just superior or ideal or just clicks better maybe with the pairings that I'm doing. So there's so much to consider. And an old breeder once said, I've said this before, but Ken always told me, I used to pick his brain all the time. And the thing that made the most sense now is he just said, well, do it and find out. That's the only way you can, to some extent. Now we can have tools. All right, is it still going to be the right direction? But sometimes at the end of the day, we got to roll those dice and see, if it works or not. And then if it doesn't, that's when a good breeder steps in and says, I'm not going to do it again. And I'm going to take care of the litter to where, I don't breed it just because it's a color, or I don't breed it or I don't sell it to somebody because it's just not right. You put it down, or let's hope it's not that bad, but you know what I mean? If it's too bow-legged or poor structure, you try to do what's best and you don't make that same mistake twice.
Yeah. I did an experiment. I didn't tell anybody about it, but I'll let it go here. I did the first time I've ever done it. I did a full brother, full sister breeding.
Cool.
First time I've
Yeah.
ever done it. I've always strayed away. That's the only breeding or type of inbreeding I've never done is a full brother, full sister. And I just did it on two dogs that have both in their own right have been phenomenal producers when bred, either inbred or line bred, but not this tight. So I crossed the brother and sister together. The mother is a fantastic dog. I mean, she self-whelps, and her maternity instincts are like unmatched. I've seen this bitch do stuff that would blow your mind. So anyway, I do this brother-sister. She self-culled the whole litter.
Wow.
And as I'm watching her do it, because I wasn't in one day, it was probably throughout a week. I saw certain things pop up in the puppies where I'm like, oh, this ain't right. I got too tight. I went too tight. I probably shouldn't do brother sister again, but it was I won't do it again, but it was enlightening that I did it,
Yeah.
seeing the
Well,
results, and I was like, well, maybe I can't go quite
Well, and
that tight
it's
on my
interesting,
horses.
not to scare you away from it or to tell you to do it again, but it's just, again, sharing knowledge helps people. So one of the best staffs that, a kid from Intrepid said he did, it was from a brother-sister breeding, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I got a dog off that dog. I loved him to death. He in a kennel accident, he died. So a friend of mine acquired him after Ken had him. And we repeated the litter, brother, sister, same exact pairing, same exact brother, and the whole litter he had a call, So
Mm-hmm.
it clicked once and it didn't again. So, I mean, you could try it a couple, it could be no good for a couple more, or it could go good for the next two or three.
Right.
You don't know,
Right.
but I don't know. Like, I agree. You got to weigh it out. Is it worth it? Is it, if you only had two dogs left, it was the only two bloodlines left, and maybe, but at the end of the day, yeah. You don't want to do stuff like that. If you already have that kind of outcome.
We're
I'm with you on that, but it's stuff we don't talk about but to tell you the truth though, I've done outcrosses and I've had stuff like that happen.
Oh
So,
yeah, agreed. Yeah.
so people think, oh, it's only inbreeding. I had a really outcross scattered male, and I bred him to a bunch of females, but so everything was outcrossed. I got so much weird crap. I called some pups from here and there and stuff. Nothing severe or nothing. I mean, from my breeding program, but and that was from outcrosses and stuff. So again, you got to take everything with, just because I'm inbreeding and it's working for me doesn't mean I tell everybody, oh, you got to inbreed, because it might just be my individuals, and vice versa. I'm outcrossing and it's working. Again, you got to know all the genetics, or just because it works in my breed, it might not work in yours or a certain bloodline or whatever. And that's what we're trying to tell people too, because they need to understand that it's not right or wrong. It's what's best for your situation. And again, it's in God's hands at the end of the day, so. And
Were
I've
your
saved pups,
brother,
like you said, and they later had problems, and I called them then, and I wish I would have let the mother take care of it. So that's another little thing too, but whatever.
were your brother, sister, were they from the same litter or different
They
litter?
were, and I thought if I did it again, if I know it's crazy. Again, I think it's just the breeder mentality of me doing it for so long. I keep thinking I can fix something or make it work, which I'm going to make this peg fit. But I thought about if I were to do it, maybe it'd make more sense to do, say you repeated the litter twice, and you do it from a different one, and that's kind of been my mentality lately on if I were to ever do it, and it would have to be superior type, for me to do it. And I had a daughter, and I think I mentioned it once before, maybe on here, but and a brother that I was going to do it with, and she actually. I waited too long to breed her, man. She just got pyometrius, and I had to get her emergency spay and stuff on her. So I kicked the tire too many times waiting around. I wish now I would have done it, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so I don't have nothing planned right now unless I get those two individuals that prove themselves to me. Why do I when I have other dogs? I can loosely do that kind of stuff, but.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
my pair as well was they were both belly mate brother and
Yeah.
sister.
So
yeah.
that's something to consider. And then with the embark thing, like he said, if that's right, because I've just been watching more stuff, tools, and see if stuff like that actually relates. So I got a litter, and some of them from I don't know, 30% to some of them are showing like 45% in one litter. And I'm like, man, to where if I were to do a brother sister in one, it would be definitely ones on the lower, and really, or even inbreeding on one. I think I would inbreed on a lower one versus one that's already up. I'd use him for an outcross, So I'm kind of been
Yeah.
trying to map myself and looking too when I do it. I'm not just saying this is right, this is wrong. I really want to say, well, let me try this. And if the outcome is what I expected, then I'm going to make note and I'm going to keep on that path, with it. And I think that's more of tools we could use. It's not, again, written in stone, but maybe for our program, it's something that can help us.
Well, yeah, that's exactly why having those kinds of numbers and having that testing done is definitely a benefit. Yeah, you would then, you're right, you would line breed or inbreed the ones with the lower COI and outcross with the ones with the higher, because they're
Yeah.
gonna, they've got the higher concentration of, the homozygous traits, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
Jerry,
So,
when there's been so much changes in the American bullies in the last five
yeah, 5 years, yeah.
5 to 6
2
years
years, it seems. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, no shit.
now
that
a Brazilian bully. But
you've you just when you started, it's changed. You came in and you talked about it, the times that we've talked, that you kind of gravitated to more of the old school original type dogs, and the kind of your in-betweeners. And with this, the more and more extreme that these dogs have gotten, how have how is this evolution for your program? How has this been, and take us up to today, and how have you been kind of trying to buck the trends and trying to educate people and try to build your program off of what you think is best for the breed?
Well, yeah, I this is the way I look at it is that a dog should be able to function like a dog, right? First of all, um, be able to move and do things, jump up on the couch. If he's a, companion dog, be in the house, go outside, play for a little bit, things like that. Typical companion dog stuff, physiology, there are limits when it comes to physiology and physics and all these things, right? And, you know, um, we have the extreme movement going on in our breed, right? More bone, more mass, bigger heads, this everything bigger, 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 bigger. Okay, well, where does that end? And these dogs, like our pockets, I mean, if your dog's not 15 inches tall and 90 pounds, you're going to have trouble competing in the pocket class, right? But um, I've always liked when I got into the bullies, I, there was just a certain style of dog that I really fell in love with. And now, as I've gone on and been in the show ring a lot more and understand, look, okay, well, I kind of, if I want to show and I want to be successful, I kind of got to play by their rules a little bit, right? But I don't have to go about it the same way that everybody else does. And so instead of falling victim to the popular sire syndrome and things like that, I, you know, I want to make my own way, right? And somebody had, I think I can't remember. I told somebody, said, I don't have to breed to a dog, with a big name. I don't have to do what everybody else does because if I breed the dogs that, or the dogs that I'm putting together, if I have a good result and I take them out into the show ring and they do well, I'll make their name, just like everybody else who made their dog's name that been successful in the show ring. I don't need to breed a big name dog. I'll turn it into a name, right? And so you have to have, I don't know. I think you just have to have that confidence that, you know, I'm just going to pick a good dog in the style, not only that I like, but that fits the standard. In standards that are written, there's enough leeway in the general descriptions of standards where you can play with the phenotype a little bit, right? And so then it comes down to just finding the right dogs, for what you're trying to do. For me, that means that my dogs are a higher percentage of what we call old school blood that was popular, more 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? With a with a mix of with a mix of a little more modern blood. Um, but given my experience from my horse breeding years and things like that, and the COI stuff and things like that, I watch those things very closely. I know my numbers. I try to keep my dogs very healthy. Um, and so I try to go down the middle, right? I just try to breed a healthy dog. But, I mean, I also am trying to breed a dog that does well in the show ring. And I have to tell you that so far we're doing good. Uh, so, I want to say our community is a lot like, and our community was kind of born out of the hip hop generation and urban influence and things like that. And they have a very short attention span. It's It's always what's next, what's hot next, right? And not many people are breeding for programs. They're just breeding dogs to sell dogs to make money. And a good breeder is always thinking about, the longevity of things, right? And always thinking 3 generations ahead. If I do this and I do this, then this, right? And I might do a breeding just to set up a breeding later on, and I
Absolutely.
think most good breeders will do that. They didn't take. We had them checked out just recently, but I just did a breeding like that. I did a breeding that I knew that was just a tool breeding, and then I was going to do what I wanted to do 2 years from now, right? But she didn't take. But we'll repeat the breeding. But you know, breeding dogs is a long term proposition. It's not something that it's unfortunately our dogs have been subjected to fads and things like that. But really, um, breeding good dogs is not about fads. It's about consistency, and it's about paying attention to the minor details, and definitely about paying attention to health and function and form conformation. All the things that the old guys, I say the old guys, but let's talk about 40s and 50s and that kind of thing. And Lloyd Brackett, um, you know, they bred dogs right. The disadvantage that they didn't have is they didn't have the technology advantage through science to understand some of the things a little bit better than what we do now. But you think about it, inbreeding coefficient stuff was invented in 1923, right? So I mean, they started using it with cattle way back then, and that's why we have such good cattle these days, right? But
That's a not to cut you off, but that's something I ponder on quite a bit. How much is the new technology a help slash a hurt? Because man, we have almost everything to speak of currently off of the original kind of breeding practices without all this technology. I'm like, I feel yes, the technology does help and it gives you maybe a different perspective on certain things, but you can't fight the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I feel like some of those old breeding strategies is just like, man, it's timeless.
yeah, and I don't disagree with that. The advantage of the technology and the information we have today just I feel like just helps. It's just information, and it's how you apply it that really is going to make a difference, right?
Mm. Uh-huh.
Um, and really, I think the most important thing that we have is now that is we have visibility to, for instance, Embark, and it tests for what's it up to now? 240 some different genetic traits or whatever, um, things. The most important thing that I see that comes from it is that when we're putting two dogs together, we have the visibility to know whether those dogs both carry
Yeah.
or whether they have one or two copies of a particular trait and whether that trait is a bad thing or not, right? And so we don't want to breed two carriers. If we have a carrier, we want to breed it to a dog that's clean for that particular trait.
Mm.
And so it gives us that visibility, and for me, I think that's the most important piece of technology that we have. The rest of the stuff really, um,
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree with you.
it's
The
good
problem that
information, but
the problem I'm seeing, I just want to mention this while I got y'all guys here, is and this is I've just been thinking about this more. And again, it goes back to the technology is always growing, right? So like in my
Mm-hmm.
breed, for example, and the breed standards changed. There was a lot of things that were accepted, and that's a whole nother discussion where this was accepted and now they ruled it out. And as the people, the dogs stopped working, doing their job, and now they're changing it. Well, how does that make the dog like it was back here? We should have kept it the same, but that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But the point I want to make was color, right? And not that I'm not a color
Mm-hmm.
breeder, whatever, but some of
Me
these
either.
pure show people, because liver was part of our breed, right? And again, what they don't realize is the story I heard, the liver dogs were cursed, so that's why they wasn't part of the Staffordshire Bull Terrier bloodline. Which liver, the red nose, right? But yet the Irish dog, the Old Family Red Nose came from
Mm-hmm.
Ireland. So you think, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure it's the same. But where I'm going with it is there are breeders out there now that are solely focused on eradicating it from every bloodline out there. And that's where I want to step in and say, well, you know what? If I get and again, it's not about color, but what if this gene is associated with something else that these
Absolutely.
tests, like you said, 240, whatever. Well, what if we get to 250 or 260 and it says, oh my goodness, that's a good gene for longevity or whatever it is that's linked to this other. And again, I'm no geneticist, so maybe I'm wrong on this, but at the end of the day, it was part of the breed. And I could see where it can hurt somebody that's not really open-minded and thinking, let's just eradicate it from the breed because it's not part of the breed standard. Like I can understand maybe Merle or something like that. That's not part of this breed, or if there's known health issues, but if there's no health problems with, or light eyes, for example, like for the longest time, I don't understand why light eyes wasn't allowed in my breed. Again, it doesn't hurt anything. And if there becomes a genetic test for it, I could see where people are eradicating it from it. But let's just say in another 10 years or 2 years, we come up with a test that says, or science that says those light eyes actually have less tendency to get cataracts, or I mean, I don't know, I'm making this stuff up, but there's a health benefit to it. And we just eradicate it from a line. So again, and like we've talked, or I think y'all kind of touched on, like my breed, I'm getting dogs. I got some long muzzled dogs, and it says, and Bark's telling me it's a shorter muzzle. The biggest key point I think breeders should know is don't take it as it's the Bible either. Like use it as a tool.
Oh
Or
yeah,
if it
yeah,
says a
yeah.
terrier of something, let's not just, it's a terrier, so I'm eradicating it from a bloodline. You still can use it as a tool. Well, I'm just not going to breed it to another carrier. And, it still has so many, types. And I think you touched on it earlier too, on maybe it was Dave, like I have checklists, right? And the problem is when someone says, oh, I need just shorter muzzle. So they're focusing on this and to where their checklist, they're not looking at. So temperament, health, skin, all this stuff starts to drop off, but they want to keep that, bone or that top line or whatever it is. To me, it's this, and then, is the ear standing up? They are, but it has all this, and this one has perfect ears, but it's lacking temperament or whatever. So again, people, we need to take it with a grain of salt and use it as a tool, and go from there. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because I think too many times I get new people come to me and they just like, oh, I'm not getting any dog with this gene in it. Well, let's look at the good and the bad. And you're going to go throw away a dog that has everything checked except for one thing where that's a perfect, like you spoke on a minute ago, man, that's a tool. That's a breeding to fix something else. And then you get that fix and you have the perfect dog. And I don't think breeders talk about that because it's not, it's not good for sales. If you said, really, this breeding is to fix something, people don't want to hear that, but it's important. And I have some that are lacking in certain areas, and I'm literally keeping them because I know their parents and their parents and their parents had this good, what trait that I'm looking for. They're lacking in, maybe we'll just use the ear thing. Like I said, standing up ears in my line, you don't want that. So for show reasons, but it has everything else. Well, I'm still going to use that dog and, to better it. So yeah, I sorry. And I just wanted to mention that too, because clarify for people that maybe are listening and they don't have the experience and don't understand where you're going with it too. That these are tools, people. Like, let's use it to better, not just it's not the rule, the main thing. I don't know. And sorry to cut you
Yeah,
off, but
any
what y'all thought on that?
any population geneticist will tell you that it's a really bad idea to eliminate any genetic variability in
Yeah,
your in your gene pool without a very, very good reason. If you
especially for
can't,
these pure breed
unless you
dogs.
can, yeah,
Yeah,
unless you can prove that there's a deleterious trait associated with that particular, like you say, a color or whatever the case may be, you'd be a fool to eliminate that genetic variability. I mean, you need to have as, you know, it's not a good idea to just, and that's why, and I counsel people. It's like, you don't cull a dog or whatever that's a carrier, that's only a carrier versus, maybe a dog that carries both copies, right? I mean, a carrier's fine, right? Carrier's not going to be affected by whatever that genetic issue is, right? Because they only carry one copy. So they can be utilized in your breeding program as long as you pay attention and you don't breed them to another dog that's a carrier of the same genetic, issue.
Mm,
And
yep.
absolutely.
because
Yeah,
otherwise, you think about if we eliminated every dog that was a carrier of something. Oh my goodness,
Wouldn't have nothing
yeah,
you
left.
know?
yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah, no,
so
I agree.
it's information and not getting not getting too wigged out about the information. I mean, information, hell, information can scare people too. I get that all the time because I deal with a lot of people that, they don't understand. They don't understand the science. They're intimidated by it. They can't pronounce the words, this and that. And so, they're a little bit scared of it, right? And I'm like, look, first of all, your dog's never going to be affected by this. And all you have to do is just make sure you don't breed it to a dog that carries the same thing. I have dogs in my program that are carriers. That's why I test every dog that I have on my yard. So I know who I can breed to what. And that's just part of it. So there's always the matchup of genotype and phenotype before we put the breeding together. You have to consider both, and then not only phenotype, genotype, like we talked about, and then you got to consider temperament and other things when it comes to considering whether it's your foundation dogs or whatever it might be. Like Dave said, I mean, I have three different lines on my yard. Not only, I mean, I have different blood for this. I have I build my own out. I'm building my own outcross, right? So I don't have to go, chase
Yeah,
somebody else.
same as
Now,
me. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and if I want to go outside, then that's fine. I can go outside, but I also want to build my own because I breed standards and pockets, right? And so yeah, I feature, I think, like really three three major bloodlines that have some similarities, and then they have an outcross, right? And so it kind of gives me about what I feel like it kind of gives me about what I need once I finish because I'm on my really I'm doing some of my I have my foundation dogs, and now they're old enough. I'm doing some outside stuff to kind of get the blood in place that I really want to work with, kind of thing, and then I go from there. But 'cause I've only been breeding. Oh well, I got in bullies 5 years ago, but I used to breed horses 25 years ago, and that's where I kind of got my knowledge about breeding and inbreeding stuff and things like that, and um, and really came from a guy who was the director of the equine program at the University of Vermont. I talked to him a lot 25 years ago, and that kind of put me along that path of the science part, right, and understanding things. Because I used to model horse breedings 25 years ago. There was actually software back then, right? It wasn't as sophisticated as what we have now, but what I have now does 10 generation uh, pedigree, COI, and all that stuff, right? So I utilize that, and a lot of my breeding's just for what I'm doing on my yard, right? And but it just so happens that I kind of turned it into a little bit of a side business, helping other people understand, right? Because sometimes you can, you know, sometimes you might want to do a line breeding, but you need to kind of split hairs on it. You don't want to get too high. You know what I mean? And so if you can always find the right dog to do enough line breeding, but keep the COI at a manageable level. You just have to find the right combination, right? But if you don't have something to model that, then you don't really know where you're at.
Mm.
So I help people along with myself. I help people kind of try to help find the right dog. You know what I mean?
On it. Yeah, you kind of touched on it where where it came from, the reason it was created. Like Staffordshire Bull Terrier, I always say the best breeders on it, and I take a lot of crap from it, are hardworking blue collar, Americans and stuff that have, you know, been in tough times and whatever. And those type of people, when they say they're going to do something, they do it. And that's the real difference. All this information that we're given, and I know I always say, oh, you need to have so much experience. It's not even that. It's proving to me that somebody is dedicated, where because the type of person I am, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And there's a lot of people out there that says, oh, I want to breed dogs. And we've seen it. Same guy that comes in the gym and says, I'm going to be like that bodybuilder, or I'm going to be this football star or whatever. And they take one practice training and they're like, I'm out of here, or fighting or UFC, well, all this stuff. We can take it. The problem is the world is so full of people that are here today, gone tomorrow. So I've kind of gotten a thick skin on, oh, okay, you
Yeah.
want to, where the real people that make it are people that just stick to their guns and they do what they say, and they keep grinding and they find a way to make it work. And where the opposite, you find these people that are, they'll go to, hey, Dave, should I do this breeding? And you say no. And then I go, hey, what do you think I should do this breeding? You say no. And then I finally, I talk to my wife, hey, wife, should I do these two breedings? And she says, well, you have both the dogs, of course, husband. And I do them, even though everybody's telling me not to. And again, it's so as people, as breeders, we can find the answers we want. Oh, so and so did it and it worked out. Well, it's a totally different situation, and let's get maybe some advice from people that have, that they're going to give us their honest opinion. They're not going to tell us what we want to hear. And a lot of times this world today is made up where, we just tell people, will go to ask people the same question or they'll go to social media or they'll go to Embark until they'll find something where, oh, well, he's terrible in all this, but he is, I love him. He's my sweet little thing. And so I'm going to breed him. I get it all the time. I hear people tell me this stuff, and I think, and you touched on it earlier, you're basic. And that's it's so basic. These are dogs first, people. They need to move. What would they do? They need to be able to jump on a couch. They need to, all this, it seems so basic, but it's not. They need to be able to, not have hip problem, leg, all this stuff. And it's really common sense stuff, but people humanize animals, and then it turns into, they're not even an animal anymore. It's just, I don't know. It's for material gain, or it's for whatever, so, and I've always been fascinated with dogs. So, I started, like, when the first bully shows came to Georgia, I'm in Atlanta, I would go to them and I'd watch them because I'm fascinated. I'd bring I had a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, champion, sensational, intrepid Floyd I took with me to these shows, and metal detectors when you went in. I had to put my gun back in the car, and low riders everywhere, but the dogs were functional still. They were, they impressed me then, because I always grew up with pit bulls, and I was still younger then too. I wanted just to see what was going on with the culture and stuff. But I actually was impressed with them back in the early days, where they've gotten to where it went from I don't know what an Arnold type pit bull thing, right, to a bulldog. Like now it's just breeding bulldogs, and it's totally changed from, it was a pit bull that we just added substance to, now it's a bulldog we're trying to make look like a pit bull, and whatever. And that's a whole nother topic too. But No, I
I take
appreciate
Yeah.
what you're doing. Yeah.
I take offense to that one. It's not a
Well, but
it's not a bulldog. It's a monstrosity.
no, you're right. And I'm sorry about that. Well, that's my
Yeah,
thing. It's there's better bulldogs. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And again,
yeah,
that does
There,
not trying to
yeah.
dig either, but
Well,
yeah,
there's so you think about American bullies, right? So most we have four varieties. We have pockets, we have standards, we have classics, and we have XLs, right? And they're all supposed to come from not. I
they're
mean,
bull. Yeah,
okay, the
but then they
same, the
nowadays
same,
do what they don't.
the same genus, right? The same gene pool. And but there's such a variety, and then you have at large you have such a community that 90% of them don't know what the hell they're doing.
They're chasing
you
fads, like
know
you said.
and
That's the biggest
they're
problem.
chasing fads,
They're not
and
functioning.
they're throwing dogs together, just to sell dogs to make money.
Yeah,
And we lost a lot of
yeah.
guys that helped start the breed that were really serious about it and creating something different, because the pit bull was being outlawed in so many places and everything, and that's why the American Bully came about. And then you know things kind of went off the rails, and a lot of those. Look, and I blame the registry. Honestly, I blame the registry for allowing all that to happen, and the judges, right? I mean, they could have drawn a line in the sand and said, "This is the type of dog, this is our standard, and that's it, and no more." But they kept letting the line move, right, more towards the bulldog side, more towards the bulldog side, and more towards the bulldog side. And you know, it's a it's a walking shit show right now, honestly.
Well, I don't even. I think we talked about it before, Jerry. I don't even think it's like. And I know I'm splitting hairs here with the bulldog stuff, but you look at a proper English bulldog and say in an AKC ring and watch it move, and I think people would be a little bit surprised compared to what we see today, and say like maybe some of your colored English bulldogs that
No,
seem to.
100%. I mean, I'm in Georgia, man. Georgia Bulldogs. I've seen so many. My
Yeah,
brother-in-law had one. It passed away. She was probably in 5 or 6 years. It would not even be considered a bulldog. The function and stuff was unreal on it, and
yeah,
it was a
Hmm.
nice bulldog, and it would live to old age, and
yeah,
to where maybe UGA made a lot of problems because they got a lot of bad health ones. They were dying left and right too, and
yeah.
that kind of trend might have hurt as well. Now I'm thinking about it, but I mean, I've seen a lot of nice quality bulldogs, like you said, to where now it's I don't know, man. I don't know. It's poor.
Yeah, I just think
Well, and
that what they're doing is they're taking these. They're just not take. They're taking more than just bulldog. They're old Englishes and Americans, and then they're shrinking
hmm
it down.
Yeah.
And then it's like you're mutating an American and an old English bulldog into 15 inches and then 95 to 110 pounds, and it's like, how could you do that? And then it's just it's sad to see because
Well, I feel like that stuff can be done, but there's no hard selection criteria or process put on the dogs being bred. Like, it probably can be done. I mean, there's some crazy stuff that's been done with
Yeah.
breeding a lot of different
yeah,
things. Stuff
yeah,
that
well,
people
if
would have thought aren't things.
the bulldogs that they used were, if they would have been of the highest quality, and it would have been done out in the open, and like any above board breed development and documented and everything, that would have been one thing. It probably would have been a lot more successful, and we
Mm,
wouldn't have the issues that we have today. But instead, it was all done, behind the lines, hung papers.
yeah.
Obviously they didn't select the best bulldogs when they did, when they were doing what they were doing and everything. So they introduced a lot of problems.
Well,
Yep.
see, that goes back to the old breeders. That's the difference people don't get. Today, we have the advantage of I can, call one of y'all and say, hey, what do you recommend? And use something that I never would have known you existed. Where back in the day that they had such high standards, if they were going to use somebody else's dog, they needed to see it work. They needed to see it, it proved so much to the neighbor's sheep, kept them, didn't kill them, kept the foxes and stuff away. And so they bred to that dog. Like there was a reason for that outcross or line breeding or whatever, to where now people don't take the same, they don't have the same regard when it comes to breeding. It's available, it's convenient, and I can make money off of it, So
Well, I tell
they
you,
go,
the thing that pops into my head when I think about old breeders versus modern day stuff, the thing that's changed a lot is back in the day, the dogs did a lot of the work
yeah,
with this almost the selection process of themselves. Nowadays, it's so easy to keep a litter alive, save a puppy,
oh, 100%.
save the whole litter. Where back in the day, 5 of them would have kicked the bucket, and these
Yeah.
strongest 2 would have came out, and those 2 were the superior animal.
Yeah.
Where today you can save the entire litter and breed every single animal,
Well,
and
and then let's
5
save the
of them
little
should have been
weakest
put
one
down.
because it's the smallest. And let's
Right.
save that little weakest one, and then let's inbreed to it. And let's
Exactly.
same. I agree, man. And the people are. I mean, the world's different. Whereas nobody has. Not a lot of people have backyards anymore. They don't go running in the woods. I mean, that's what I did. I don't think people do that much anymore. Where. So these animals, these breeders, even the dogs are all inside, which again, I'm not knocking nobody, but back in the day, you'd be catching heck from grandma or
Oh,
mom if you brought your dog inside. You know what I
yep,
mean? To
yep,
where it had to survive out back, or even your husband.
Sure
exactly.
did.
Your wife would have hit you with a frying pan. You bring that dog inside. So just the the whole things changed to where these dogs actually called themselves if they didn't make it through winter,
Absolutely.
or they had a skin issue and they couldn't live off of old Roy, they kind of kicked the bucket, or mama said we had to get rid of it because it was costing too much, So yeah, there's so many factors, but so you fast forward, we have so much more we can save, we can do this, we can just put it in air condition and put ointment on it every day, or I mean, there's YouTubers out there, which I think it's great that they're helping people but the problem is the more of this that comes out, like let's just give it this vitamin and it fixes its skin coat, temporary, or this shot you can give them, but it's okay to breed it. Well, then you're still breeding. You're just pacifying that, for someone else to get. And if you want to improve on something, it's best to just eradicate that from a breeding program. You don't have to hurt the dog or not and kill it or nothing. We're talking about just finding a good home, not use it for your breeding or keep it as just a house pet, but yeah, that's the problem. People are soft. They're not going outside grabbing a chicken, cutting its head off and cooking it. They can't
Yeah,
even stomach that, So
yeah.
it's times have changed.
That's why I credit the quality of the courses that I have, and just the old blood
Oh,
being saved.
100%.
Where I found it is it was in the hands of the Amish since the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, they're as old school as it gets.
Yeah.
They don't have no electric heat mats and heat lamps to keep litters warm, and all this medication. What the dogs that can naturally breed, the dogs that can naturally whelp, the puppies that naturally can,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
same with my bloodline, same scenario, not with the Amish, but same, good old country boys if the dog wasn't doing it on their own, if killing all the pups or, not making it or smothering them or whatever it was, they didn't keep them or didn't make it out.
absolutely,
In Georgia, it gets cold, it gets hot, and it did me a service to where I don't have to keep 50, I can keep less and just again refine like we talked to where you get that select. So that's where things have changed now to where we can use some of the technology, keep a lot less, and already know that these dogs are hardy enough to make it. And like you said, they've done the groundwork and the hard work. Your job is to preserve and then tweak and make a little bit improvements here and there,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, why would you say somebody like Mike Satilli Sr., why was he such a great breeder? And then,
Well, I wouldn't say he was a great breeder. To be
Okay.
honest, I don't even, because his time was so short in the courses from '88 when the inception happened, or when they got debuted to the public. I don't know how long behind the scenes he was working on it, but after they got debuted, I think he was only alive for a couple years after that, and then he passed away. So he debuted and kind of showed them to the public, but it wasn't him that kind of refined and kept the bloodline going. It was the breeders that came after, Ed Hodis, Linda Cedino, Linda Valentine, that put the generations on the ground. Inbred, line bred, kind of created a line. Mike Senior really didn't do nothing except for kind of debut him to the U.S.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just where I was going was just like, if some of these guys you wouldn't say that they would have traditionally high intelligence or
Well, I think he was smarter than your average bird. But
yeah.
also the thing is, I think you could get a lot. It was easier to get lucky back in the day because the quality of dogs back in the day was just so much higher.
Because they lived outside. I mean, they still survived natural. There were dogs today. You throw them all outside. I guarantee you, all these bloodlines with my breed especially, you put them all on chains, throw them out in the yard. Don't give them no skin oil rubs and $150 dog food, and let's see who makes it through the year.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's like he's stating is the biggest part. A lot of these guys, and they could keep more, and there's so much more to it back
Right.
then.
Keeping more is
today.
also a big thing. Is that guys are trying to build bloodlines and build families around 4 or 5 dogs.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. I
It
mean,
really
and
is.
that's what's killing. That's what's killing our breed, and I'm saying our breed as dog breeders is. Well, it's almost stinking illegal to have more than 5 dogs.
Thank
They're
you.
trying to make
That's
it
why I
illegal to
never
have more
say
than
how
5
many I have.
dogs.
I hate to say it, and I don't have a lot for everybody out there. But you know what I'm saying, because the laws and stuff, and that's just the facts. You can't have, which is ridiculous. This is America. You think you should keep whatever you want as long as they're
I
healthy and
know.
they're taken care of. But they want to get their money in. They want permits. They want this and that. And
Your
people,
kennel
if they don't
license.
like
That's
you, they'll
what
turn you.
I was flying underneath the radar for the longest time, just doing my thing. And I finally got caught. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And all they wanted is $100, and now I'm allowed to legally. I can have up to $50. I just got to pay $100 a year.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
just one of
But
it's just one of
really,
those
Yeah,
things.
you need 10, 15 dogs if you're gonna
Easily.
have. I mean, I have 20. Now they're not all American bullies. I mean, I have a Corso also, Dave.
Oh boy.
He's got it. He's got a nice one.
And but also I have a French bulldog. So,
Okay.
but no, he's 29 inches tall and 180 pounds.
Okay.
He just turned 2 years old this month, so we're getting ready to. He he got bigger than the standard, so we couldn't show him, but we're gonna get his OFA testing done. He's had a lot of his testing done and everything, but now that he's 2, we can finish him up. And but he's a really nice dog. He's a good boy, But I don't know all the bloodlines and stuff. I know Scandifio and that kind of thing, but I don't. I co-own him. I do the I manage the breeding side of it,
Okay.
collecting and and I mean I got him. I got him to show because I train and I show dogs, right? So
Yeah.
I was gonna show him for the people that bred him, and then I would get the benefit of my wife loves big dogs. She loves big dogs. She has 2 other big dogs, and so it's like, okay, great, no big deal. And but I love him to death. But yeah, he's definitely an out of standard kind of dog. He's huge.
Yeah. No, I have a few. I have a few that I don't have anything that weighs that much, but I definitely get your occasional 28, 29, 30-inch Corso. Like you said, it's not the standard, but
Yeah.
like you were saying, it's a tool because you might have a bitch that's only 24, 25.
Well, he has a littermate brother that just became AKC Grand Champion. So he was obviously smaller, right?
Right. Yeah.
But so yeah, it's Yeah, he's just, I enjoy him. He's definitely a lot of dog. I mean, they're
Oh yeah.
they're an interesting breed, for sure. But I've had all kinds of breeds, and especially I had Rottweilers too, when I had
Hmm.
my horse farm stuff. But so I've had all kinds of dogs, but I really like him. He had a penchant for drywall when he was younger, but other than that,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, but yeah, I'm lucky. I got two brothers, so I can spread my dogs out with them and stuff, and family members and everything. But yeah, like back when y'all said, if you don't have enough of the genes, just going and I mean, it just you'll hit a dead end, and that's the hardest part to maneuver. And people think, I don't know. I guess you could make money off of it if you wanted, but when you really do it right, you're just doing it because you love it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I mean, by the time you get done paying all the bills and everything, and you're just happy. I'm just happy my wife lets me continue, and as long as I can, my kids are not going without and stuff. I'm happy with it. I try to.
yeah. Well, you have to breed, select, and retain, right? I mean, your
Yeah,
females eventually are going to time out, so you get
yeah. I
in
just
that
had that happen. Yeah,
process where you've got, and not only that. I mean, if you're if you're doing a breeding, you should want to be retaining something off of it. Otherwise, why are you doing the breeding?
but that's the
Of
first
course.
flag
Yeah.
I see where these people doing all these breedings and like I guess maybe that's maybe an end goal. Maybe when I'm retired one day from my other jobs, I can just put out good dogs for other people. But right now, every and even then I want to be keeping something to better it. So that's the first thing I tell people that are looking for dogs. My advice, oh, I'm going to get this dog from so and so. Are they keeping anything from it? No. Well, why should you? Where did they get their dogs from? They got it from so and so. Then why don't you just go to them and get a dog? Because these breeders are getting dogs, and I don't want to get people started on that type thing. But just kind of think of it, look at it a little bit basic. Like they're not even keeping their own dogs. It's not even worthy enough for them. They're getting other people's stuff. But at the end of the day, it's really just to make money, and so that's what their intentions are. And maybe not always, but I mean, there's never been a litter that I hadn't kept something from. Now there's been litters that nothing turned out that I kept, so I
Yeah, well,
never
sure.
moved forward. But as far as the whole goal, and I think maybe that should be if you're not going to breed and keep something from it, and really, the truth is you should keep a whole litter, but that I get that why some people can't. That's the hardest thing. But maybe even a couple from each one, or at least one. Like so, we're talking
Oh
about
yeah.
minimum
I
to
I
keep
get on
them. That's
people a
the way
lot
I see
about
it.
that.
Yeah,
If I see people selling puppies at 8 weeks, I'm just like,
yeah,
that's been something I've harped on for years. It's like I'm keeping everything till 15, 16, 17, 18 weeks at
yeah,
least
yeah.
before you start making picks. So
I
if
know.
breeders are telling you they're making picks at 8 weeks old, I'm just like, there's a red
Oh
flag for
yeah.
me.
I actually get to where, and I don't even take money from people or nothing. Like I'm trying to get rid of them. Like I'm just telling them when something comes available, I'll let you know when I make my
Yeah.
decision. And they're like, "What's your phone number? I want to send you this. I want to say." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no." Like please, please. To where I get so sick of it, I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna roll the dice." Still hadn't, 12 weeks old. I'm like, I'm gonna roll the dice on these three, and I'm gonna, see if and if they don't make it, then I'm just at a loss because I'm so stressed with wanting to help somebody else out, and I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm a breeder. Like I've done this enough. Let's hope all of them should be good in the litter, and we know not all of them are, but at the end of the day, I gotta keep because I've gotten rid of the best dogs and been like, all right, I can redo this again. I can recreate. If I can breed that one, I can do another one. And I try to just tell myself that to make me feel better about, missing out on a litter. I'm like, dang it,
Well,
but they
see,
were so
that's
nice.
where that's
Their kid was so cute, and I wanted them to get into the dogs, and stuff. And I'm the type of person, I want you to have the best. So like if you came to me, one of y'all, and said, I want it, and I was like, all right, I want them to have the best. And so that's kind of my downfall where I really should just hang on to, you know, but again, like you said, man, you don't know at 8 weeks. You don't know. Heck, you don't know at 12 or you really don't know
You
until
really
they're
don't.
closer to a
No,
year.
you
You
really
know,
don't.
and even then, you don't. I go 18 months before I really check one out, and I've had sent some pack and they just didn't work out. Or opposite ones, I kept one once that I thought was no good. As a pup, it was doing weird stuff. It ended up being a keeper, like the best in the litter. So, and I've been doing it forever. I've
Yep.
never seen a clear
Well,
person that can. It's a roll of the dice, and I used to
that's
think when I
where
was
I
young.
differ from you guys.
Oh, Burrell, I might need you to
Yeah,
pick out some ones for me then, because I can't.
I'm I make picks at 8 weeks plus or minus 3 days.
Nice.
And so and here's why. Let me explain why. So when I bred horses, you had a small window when a foal was about 3 months of age, right?
Yeah,
So when they were about 3 months, that was your time to get a glimpse of what they would look like when they were 2 years old. Because
yeah,
after that, they just grow like this, and you never see. It's like
right.
you never see the horse again until it turns like 2 years old, right? So there's that little bitty window. So there's a video on YouTube called The Puppy Puzzle, if you've never
Yeah.
watched it. And it was a couple, and they did a 20-year study about when is the best time to pick a puppy, right? And how it's going to look in its adult form, right? So puppy versus adult. And they came to the conclusion after studying the dogs for 20 years that the ideal time was 8 weeks plus or minus 3 days. Now, that said, um, I have also experienced, and this was just sheer accident. In my very first litter, I had 6 females and 2 males, and there was a female or 2 females actually, and it would be my first litter. Nobody knew me, that kind of thing, right? And um, we had pictures done at 11 weeks, and a couple of them looked pretty terrier looking. Nobody really wanted them. I couldn't sell them, so I'm like, well, I'll just hang on to them, right? Well, and this is where knowing your blood and how things change and stuff is really important, because I think at about 10 months old, dog, she completely changed, right?
Oh yeah.
And now she definitely is bully looking, and she's the biggest bitch out of the litter, that I had.
Yeah.
And sometimes you will
Oh
get
yeah.
a surprise. You will get a
Well, I think for
surprise.
us though, it's the working side that we don't know. Like, so I'm with you. Like
Oh
at
yeah, I would
3
see
days
that.
old,
I can see that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
3 days
Yeah.
old, I will look at it. So this is my thing. Bones aren't going to change much. Now they're swollen when they come out, right? But about the
Right.
3 days, the swellingness, and I will look at a puppy's structure. I used to do this
Structure.
more. I don't so
Yeah.
much anymore. And then again at 8 weeks, because I agree, the conformation side of it, I can kind of get a good depiction on the structure is going to be this way. And I agree with you 100%. And then but for me, like for working on a hog or something like that, I need to try it. And I need to give them enough fair chance. So even at a year old, they might not be interested. And then 17 months, they turn on. So I try to
Yep.
give mine to about 18 months to see if that, I kind of got an idea on structure before then, and that's where I at the end of the day, I got to roll the dice. Unless I'm keeping every puppy until 18 weeks or really 2 years, 18 months, I'm sorry. I don't know. It's kind of like a hope that it works out and a hunch, but yeah, I agree with you on structure. If you've done it enough and you know your bloodline and stuff, you can get a really good idea. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do more so. Like I've been linking it more this way too with genetics is it looks like the grandfather or the father or this one, and this is a really good at this X, Y, and Z. So I'm hoping in my head it makes sense that maybe that link will come. And then I see traits when they're running, like they'll make certain moves as the offspring behind them. Like the father always did that. He always, like I had one dog, for example. very smart. Oscar, there was two in the litter. A brother of his just mean as crap trying to fight him all the whole time in the litter. I had a little tiny like dog crate thing in it, this box area. He would jump on it. Oscar would get on, and this was like 5 weeks old, 4 weeks old. I think it was 5 weeks old. He would climb up on it, and the other one would run around trying to get to him, and he'd go to sleep up there, you know. And I've seen others with that similar, characteristic as a young age, and they have more of that temperament, that demeanor and stuff as Oscar, and it's little things like that, all of it together, and then structure, and then head, and then look and say, okay, maybe there is links to stuff like that when dogs have, or even markings. And I think I mentioned this before, maybe a solid white chest, and the father had that, and maybe it's going to share more of the the genes as that for whatever. But yeah, I know what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. But on the working side for me, I don't know until later, and again, I can't keep
Well, and
them
their
all.
personalities do change. I mean,
Yeah,
from 6 weeks to 8 weeks to 4 months. I mean, there's a big change in their confidence and their personalities and different things, and those things continue to evolve. And as someone who breeds for the show ring, I'm evaluating a puppy on not just that structure, which I don't get too wound up. I really start
right.
looking at them
But you want a confident
at
pup
about
too.
6 weeks. But for a show dog, you have to have a confident, right?
Yeah.
A
Oh,
confident dog.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and so just recently I hung on to uh two males and a female out of the litter because I was set on the female, but two males I was trying to really pick between, man, which one's gonna, I couldn't really decide because the one that was he was a little bit more timid, but his structure was a little bit better than the one that was outgoing. And I'm like, which one, right? And we took all three of them to a show, and they all did great and everything. But I sold the one that was just a little bit timid. His structure was just a
Mhm.
tad bit better. I ended up selling him at the show. I just think that when you try to put a whole show dog together, that temperament, that exuberance, that outgoing, because this little pup, he was so much like his dad, and that outgoing personality, and you just need that for the show ring because
Well, I
that's
mean, that
just
could be
part of
different between
what's.
first and second, I mean, or
Hmm.
whatever. Yeah, absolutely,
Yep,
man.
yep.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so yeah, I ended up hanging on to. I will hang on to a pup, a little bit longer until I can really decide. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I got one out there right now. He's 18 months old. And I knew from the time he was a puppy, he was going to be longer to develop because of where I felt like he came from in this pedigree, right? That he was going to take, and he is really turning into a really, really nice dog. But I've kept him for 18 months so far just to try to figure out, how's he really going to turn out, So we don't have the working part of it like you guys do, but there are certain times where hanging on to that dog, because you really, really don't know until they hit about 2 years old.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
don't know how you guys feel about this. This is something I've noticed. My inbred specimens always mature out way longer than
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
say my outcross dogs or my line bred dogs. My
Mhm.
outcross dogs mature super fast. I mean they'll males will be showing maturity at under 10 months. Line bred dogs a little bit longer, and then inbred dogs, shoot, 2.5, 3 years old till they're like actually showing like peak maturity.
That's
I'll
the
have to look into that. I
hybrid
hadn't
vigor
actually
thing.
noticed.
Yeah,
I hadn't
yeah.
looked at it. I hadn't thought about it. I'll have to think about that.
Well,
Yeah, I always thought.
I tell people sometimes think about how you were at the age of 7 and how you were at the age of 28.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
always thought from me looking at it was just different bloodlines. Like Like
Yeah.
mine always matured physically faster, I thought. Now I'm gonna look into the inbreeding because that does make, because I have some that seem more mature than, physically grow. But a lot of like the other bloodlines, like show lines, I'll just use that for example. I mean, they all come from show lines, but like I see some dogs that are like 8 months old and they're fully developed looking. They're like complete, and then they just get a little bit more
Mm.
muscle on them. Where, you know, my dogs aren't like that. They're more lanky and, pit bully looking, I guess. And some people say, "Oh, that looks like a pit bull puppy or something," and then boom, they pop when they're 2 years
Mm.
old. That they tie in, and it's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. Like
Yeah.
so. I don't know, but I'll have to look. I mean, I have one inbred male I just got, and he matured like, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna really have to think now back on some of them, but I swear he looked more mature earlier on than some of my others too. Again, I don't know if maybe it was just a coincidence, but now I want to start looking
And I
into
wasn't I
that
wasn't
more.
really saying like physical features. I don't really notice
Or
a
you mean
huge
like
difference.
mental?
Like mental and like
Okay.
like sexually mature. Like
Okay.
I'll notice like my outcross dogs, like males will be ready to breed at 10
Yeah.
months. I mean, they're
Okay.
marking and trying to breed females at
Right. Well, he's
10
been
months,
like
and
that
then
too. He's been
my
serious, but that's why I kept him, from the
yeah.
litter. But they were all like that too. So I don't know. You got me really thinking now. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah. No, he's always been mentally like he's like an adult now. Like you wouldn't know. Like you'd want to hunt him hard now, and you're like he's a pup still. Like I tell myself that.
Hmm.
Like I have to tell myself this guy's not ready.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I still don't think, even though he seems ready mentally, he's not ready. I don't think I don't want to try him yet because,
yeah.
but I mean, I've tried him on some stuff. He's old enough now, but not like hogs yet. So I'm planning on that soon. But I keep reminding myself he's young. Like, and I think because I treat him because he, like you said, that mental maturity. That's interesting. I'll have to look into that more on, like, I'll be thinking about it
Yeah, same
all
way.
night
I
now.
don't know about what you guys think about this. I don't know. I don't want to keep this going too long. I'm soon going to have to
Yeah, me
hit the
too.
bed for the night.
Yeah.
But I always think my super inbred stock, like my stuff that's 28% COI or better, and that's just going off
And on
paper
like
numbers,
on
not
embark
physical
or like
numbers.
what? Where on
That's just
embark?
paper numbers. That's just paper
Oh, okay,
numbers.
okay.
Um, like those dogs, I don't feel the need to work them as much as I do like my outcrosses or my line bred dogs. Like my super inbred dogs, I'm like they're brood stock. They're strictly
Oh,
brood
yeah, yeah,
stock.
yeah. I see what you're saying.
I don't feel the need to go out and test a bitch that's complete super inbred because her job is to sit there and look pretty and push those genetics that I've
Yeah.
tested and funneled down to that point. But some people can't grasp that
Well, and I
ideology.
think
They
the
think
difference between being
everything
a
needs to be
breeder,
tested.
I think that's the difference between being a good breeder and people that are just like they're just dogmen. And I know a lot of friends like that, and I know a lot of people that's gotten dogs, from me or had great dogs, and they've let them get killed on stupid stuff like that because they had to prove something. Like every dog gets
Mhm.
work, every dog gets, and I used to be like that. Like I lost some dogs, stupid stuff because I was that it has to prove itself and I'm not
Yeah,
touching them until they're whatever. Now I look at it differently. This is what I do. I'll breed them a few times and I'll start raising pups off of them. And then I start testing them harder and
hmm
harder. So I still kind of
hmm
work in to where, but because then if they don't work out, then it's easy for me to just get rid of the pups. But let's say they do work out and they get killed out.
yeah.
And
You
this
have
doesn't happen
offspring.
often. I don't want people to think,
Yeah,
but so that's kind of, but I do have some, like you said, that are so valuable. They won't get like I'll at least get pups off of them before I even
yeah,
try to, so that's
yeah.
kind of been mine. But I agree. And there's been a lot of good bloodlines, man, that's been lost. I know a lot of awesome dogs I would have bred solely because, and I don't want to be, I just breed on pedigree. It's not that. It's the lineage of working stock or sound stock behind that dog.
Right,
And
right.
it'd be worth rolling the dice on something like that. Not even rolling the dice. We're breeders. So obviously we should be able to breed to that. And then we can test off those. And the bottom of the line is we're going to cut it there if that dog that's never been hard worked, doesn't make their offering doesn't make the grades. It doesn't even matter what she was, because it ends there. Even if she was the best worker in the world, this is the way I see it, and these don't work out, the offspring, she never produced anything or he never produced anything, then it ends with them anyway. So
Right.
if I can skip one line, I know it, because I have some in, and the longer I've done this, the longer I'm in it, the more I know what you're saying, where I'm holding on to some of that. They're too valuable to or I'll
Oh
get
yeah,
dogs
because
back.
dumb stuff always happens, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't want to chance it on the dog. I put too much work
And I used to do
inbreeding
that, and I lost
to
dogs
this
that way.
point. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
same. And
That's
people
smart.
are like, oh, you haven't tested that dog, and I'm like, dog's too test. I don't even want to displace a hair on her head. I'm like, she's there to
I
she's
know.
there
They
she's
don't
there to
understand
produce
what it's like.
puppies.
They're priceless to you or me. I
Right,
have
right.
something like that. So like my male I just told you about, I got him collected. So this is a new thing I'm doing with some of my males. I'll collect them, and then I'll go and I'll work them hard. And that way, if something happens, and again, it's not like it happens a lot, but it's happened once or
Hmm.
twice to where
Hmm.
it scared me to death. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all those, just like this female I just had, I was so scared to breed her that now she ended up with pyometria, and I didn't even, and she was like one that I was like, I'll value, like I'm going to start, my line's going to really focus on her, but I need to find the perfect male,
Yep,
or
yep,
should I do
yep,
brother, sister, should I do this? And now I wish I would have just done something.
yep.
And,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I totally get it. But yeah, I'm trying to, my males, I'm trying to collect on some that I really, and then, cause I can throw the semen away if the dog don't turn out, but I can't get the dog back if something happens to him,
Absolutely, absolutely,
The
and
female.
the fact that you were saying like breeding on a line. So, I don't like the fact that people sometimes are like, well, I don't want to just breed on it because it's old blood. It's like, no, do that because there's too
Yeah.
much blood, unless it was just a lousy bloodline to begin with. But if there is any bit of quality there, breed
Yeah.
it and save the bloodline, because it's so easy to lose a bloodline.
Yeah, it's
I've
easier to
seen it time and
fix a
time
little
again.
thing. I agree. I've seen it too. Not to cut you off, I agree 100%. And that's the difference between it's like for the working side of people, they don't want to hear that. They want to work it. I want everything tested. I want
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
But as a breeder side of it, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make a stupid mistake. And because they don't give a crap, they'll get another dog. They'll go to the pound and
right,
get one. They don't
right,
care. They,
right.
and I've known these people, and they'll just get, or these trainers. They'll just, someone else will give them a dog. Someone else will give them a dog. They're
Yep,
not
yep.
breeding a bloodline. Like, it's more important to me to where, yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, it needs to, and there's some lines that are died out from stupid stuff like that. So I
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to be, and I still want it, but I'll just test something off of them, or again, like I found out ways. I'll have a litter of pups off of them, and then, because I still am, I want a lineage of what I've been doing, but of working, them working. But I'm not going to push some harder. I'm going to push some a lot less harder than others, because they
Mhm.
don't. An outcross is going to get pushed real hard. Like
Right,
I need to
right.
see what they're going to do. Whereas some of, like you said, just my preservation, and I'm really going to that now, where I'm trying to save some lines out there, some working lines that dogs that have already been proven. I'm trying to do that more, like, and it sounds terrible, but I'm trying to get some dogs in some old bloodline that's valuable to me, that they prove themselves, that I want to continue going, but I won't get into all that. But yeah, I'm
Yeah,
with you on
yeah.
that, man. That's the difference between being a great breeder and being just a good breeder. Like you
Mhm.
got to preserve yourself, like because I'd rather use, even if, let's say it's a bad dog, and I keep going on, I'm sorry, but like, I would roll the dice with a bad old school bloodline than a bad good one, or one today, like, I don't know the genetics behind it, just the whatever. And if you're a breeder, you can get better out of it. You can fix
Well,
things. You can improve
that's
things.
what I always say.
You
I'm
can't go
like,
back once it's
even
gone.
even a bad dog from some of these great old lines, a good breeder knows how to pull the good out of a bad dog,
Yeah.
even if it's from a good line
So
versus
my
a
old
shitty
breeder
dog
was
from a
like
shitty
that.
line.
Yes, like my friend that was a breeder was like that. He had dogs on his yard that they didn't register back then to me, like, oh, why? And it produced great, and it did, now I see the valuable. And then he tried to give me dogs like that, and I'm like, no, I don't want that in my yard. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not lying. I'd give $10,000 today for that dog,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
was way
yeah.
back, underbite. but it
Yep.
was a great
Yep.
dog. I can't explain it, and I could do something with that. I could improve it. I could make it better.
Yep.
Trust me,
Yep.
it had everything
Yep.
else. Because once you lose it, you can't get it back. Just look at Staffordshire Bull Terrier, the terrier side of it. Unless you do outcross to a different breed, and that's what a few people are doing. I'm totally against. I have some of the last of the more terrier pure lines to where everything 99. My brother, my brother's not on social media and stuff. He's still in his fantasy world where we have been our whole life. His head's still in the sand. It's been in the sand where he's like, oh, we can, all dogs look like ours, the staffs out there. I said, no, bro, they don't. Like, I'm trying to beat it in his head, and he's like, I have a couple of bitches out. He's like, man, she's terrier. Like, she's too much, man. We need to keep back to balance. And I'm like, you don't understand. We need the extreme because once it's bred out, like we were talking about color or what, you can't get it back, and some of those people, they can't get it back no matter what they do unless they add something else or adding my dogs to them to get that length of muzzle,
Yep.
Oh, and that's just an example. It could be temperament. It could be a bunch of stuff, a certain health thing that nobody else has. So, you just got to be smart with that. But as a breeder, that's something that I'm always fighting with and stuff. And I got.
I liked when Jerry said about setting up breedings. That is a you're setting up that breeding to do a breeding 2 years from that. I was like, shit. I'm glad somebody said that because most people don't say that and people don't understand it. Like I've done breedings like that and then passed a dog to a friend. And he's like, I don't know, Dave. This dog doesn't look like. I'm like, the way this dog looks ain't important. What she produces is what's important.
Because I've seen great dogs produce crap, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I know. So I got a litter. It's a long story. I won't get it. I had a private litter. I had a friend. I sent a pup to. Long story short, it didn't work out. So I got another friend. I said, I actually wanted to keep the whole litter. It's a long story. I ended up, he kept tugging on me. So I ended up saying, I'll send you this pup. Well, I ended up a person that lives like within an hour from him that's gotten a dog from me before that I know, and they've been wanting one for a while. I said, hey, man, I got a dog that's real close to you. If you want to get it, man, this is a great opportunity. He's like, I don't know. What do you think? What would you recommend this litter? And I got to thinking, I'm like, and the male off of this litter is he's 11 and a half years old, almost 12. And I thought about it and I said, I've been planning this breeding for probably 8 years. Like, so when I got him when he was a 2 or 3, because where I'm going with it, the female is line bred on him to where, and I know y'all are gonna hate. So it is, the puppy's 82% the father. Okay, so it's that line bred, but instead of doing father inbreed 3 times and getting 87% or whatever, I did a roundabout where I did I went around it and still keep the coefficiency super high, but I did outcrosses in the middle and it clicked, man. And these puppies are excellent, great. So far they're still young, but where I'm going with it is, yeah, I mean, I set that up 8 years ago. I was thinking I want the perfect female one day so I can, for his last litter, and I was hoping I would get a male. And so I got 2 males off of him. There were 4 pups. One ended up, I found it dead. People, again, they don't realize what breeders go through. It chewed on some of the substrate in the thing, choked on is all I can figure out. My wife found it and stuff. So I had 3 from it, and I ended up, like I said, sending one to a buddy, and I wanted to keep all 3, but again, he anyways. So, and I got 2. I'm super happy with those as well. So again, but I've been planning that crap for even before the female came, and it all came together. It all worked out, and I hope it continues to work out with these 2 that I got. A lot can go wrong, but I joke, even if it had 3 eyes, I'd probably breed to one of them, because I wouldn't. But you know what I mean. Like right now, I don't want
people get too caught up on they want every dog to have it all, and like I said, when you there's a specific breeding that I did where I'm like, listen, these pups might not look like the full package, but watch what they produce. They will produce the full package, but it's that waiting period of 2 years for waiting for a bitch to mature where the guy's like, I don't know, Dave, this doesn't look. This doesn't
and y'all
look
dogs are bigger.
like,
it's a lot bigger change. My dogs are smaller. I can see a lot faster when they go. They go to to 30 pounds, 40 pounds max, or whatever, so some a little bigger, but yeah, no, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. That's interesting.
That's just it. It's you know, in a way, we're kind of artists, right?
Absolutely.
Create, we're trying to create, a living masterpiece, I guess, in a way to explain it, right? And
Hmm.
a lot of times, it's a piece from over here and a piece from over here, and they don't all come together at one time. And so, you may spend a lifetime trying to create that one dog that's just exactly like you want it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That,
Yeah. And
that
I think
that's
the
the
trick
that's
That's
is
the
if
goal.
you
but
can do it
that's
more than
that's the
once,
that's the challenge and that's the fun too, though. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
That's what I
absolutely.
tell
recognizing that.
everybody in the course. So everybody wants to cookie cut everything. They want everything to be exactly the same. And I'm like, if I could cut stuff tomorrow,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it because I'm like, once you cookie cut, I'd be like, the fun's over.
Yeah, I
I'm like,
agree. Yeah.
the different phenotypes and the matching the different pieces and playing that long game. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what keeps me intrigued. It keeps me, coming back for more after all the kicks to the groins they give you.
Yeah. Right.
That's what
All the
keeps bringing me
curveballs.
back to the table.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's another reason why I don't like super high COI type dogs. I mean, so the purpose behind that, right, is to drive consistency in phenotype throughout the litter, right? And
Yes.
so,
Yep.
Yeah.
how people get known for a certain type of dog. Their dogs
Yes.
always look like this, and these guys' dogs look like this, and so on and so on. And I look at it this way. I know that the lower the inbreeding coefficient on a dog, typically, right, the healthier that dog's going to be.
Yes.
Um, and but I look at it in looking at it this way is that not every customer likes the same exact thing, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
if I have a litter that's still good quality, but there's some variability in there, right? Then I look at it like I expand my market a little bit because not everybody, like I said, not every they want a bully, but they may not want the same exact thing, right? I mean,
Yep.
when I do a breeding, if I got eight pups, four or five are going to be about like I wanted, and then two or three might have drawn a little bit more from the terrier side, or maybe some little
Well,
variability
that's
or
why
something.
not that I necessarily breed to sell to the public, which I don't, but that's why I kind of have those three lines, three different phenotypes, one phenotype per each line. Is like you said, everybody doesn't like the same. My perfect dog isn't the next person's perfect dog,
Yep.
so I have a little bit of variety to pick from. And if they need something, like say their dog is super boxy, heavy bone, short muzzle, and they want to make the dog a little bit more athletic. Well, I got the dog for that. If they want to make
Yeah.
an athletic dog a little bit more blocky, I got the dog for it. If they want to come to me for those pieces, and that is something that if you only have one thing to offer, you're like you said, you're narrowing your
Well, and in different
potential
jobs,
customer.
like for me, maybe more bone is good on a dog that's going to be busting hogs, right? But
Yeah.
if it's going to be in the barns getting rats and getting, raccoons and whatever, then maybe I want a little bit more terrier type.
Yeah.
So again, I need that. I think you need it in the breed. And I think the breed was always like that as well, to
Yeah,
where,
yeah,
and then you get extreme too much this way, then let's go back this way. And same with temperaments. People don't get that. I got some that are a little bit more high strung. I always use, and then I have some that are real calm, which I love the calm ones. But every now and then you need one that little kick in the butt, and it's a constant balancing act when you
Yeah.
breed. Or if someone wants one
oh,
for weight pull, they don't want this calm, chill, lazy. And it's not lazy for my breed, but it is for the type of work they want to put them through. They
Yeah.
need one
Yeah.
that's I got some jumping up and down, up and down, up and down, waiting, ready. Which I used to
oh yeah.
love that when I
People
was younger,
people
but I
have
can't get
have
away from
chewed
it. I
me
like the
out.
variety. Yeah,
People have chewed me out with the courses. I like aggressive dogs. I like it. And they chewed me out for saying that I'll keep and breed from a male that challenges me and has come at me multiple times. But I'm
yeah,
like, hey, you need that extreme on one side because you got to think that aggression is always going to get watered down. You're not going to always be able to maintain it. So I'm like, you need an outlier on the extreme side once in a while. I'm not saying every
Yeah.
dog
Right.
to
Right.
keep that aggression, where it needs to
Yeah.
be. At least for me.
Yeah, for that
Yeah.
breeding, I mean, for the type of breed, I would, me, I try to keep nothing like that challenging me at all. But as far as
Right.
other things, but again, like you said, you have to have that, outliners, and you got to know the limits, you got to know whatever, and it's all people write me, I want this. It's not like that. I'm not dropping this,
It's
and,
not Build-A-Bear
it's
for
not a
dogs.
car, it's not a semi line,
Yeah, Build-A-Bear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, Build-A-Bear. That's exactly it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not, man. And I tell people, well, someone that's producing this. I got a list too, buddy. Let's do it. I don't even know if
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
get this from what I'm doing, but let's hope, and that's part of it too. It's that you're putting the quarter in the machine, and you're seeing what you can possibly get in there. You just hope you get that ring, that gold ring or whatever, that comes out, I don't
Yep.
know. Like that.